What happened in Denver?
President Trump turns his attention to Denver. He actually means Weld County. COVID-19 is spreading there at a meatpacking plant. Workers have died and the union says shut it down now. Testing for coronavirus does not seem to be increasing in Colorado, and that's what the doctors say we need to reopen the economy. So let's check in on the team that was supposed to innovate Colorado's way out of that mess. Ooh, some of you are mad that I suggested staying out of the high country. And this Friday's good news is so good, it brought her to her knees. You don't have to choose between straight talk and optimism because both are next. The food supply is good. We have heard that time and time again. And for America's food supply to remain good, what that needs is safe and healthy workers to grow and to raise, to pick and to process and to ship the food to us. Right now, the situation in one part of Weld County is not good. Men have died and more men are getting sick at the JBS meatpacking plant in Greeley. It is such a significant and serious situation that it has come to the attention of President Trump. The union says that 2 men have now died. 40 others tested positive for COVID-19 and more are sick and afraid to come forward because they won't get paid if they don't work. The situation in Greeley was addressed by the president today. Just note, when he talks about Denver, he means Greeley.
What happened in Denver? Because in Denver, I've never seen. I said, what's going on? We're looking at this graph where everything's looking beautiful and it's coming down, and then you got this one spike. I said, what happened in Denver?
Governor Jared Polis says he has had discussions with the White House about what it would take in terms of safety procedures and personal protective equipment in order to keep that meatpacking plant open during the pandemic. Testing. All right, you know that we need testing. We talk about this here every night, and the issue is that it seems to have hit a plateau in Colorado. We're not testing at a faster rate than we were 2 weeks ago. Increased testing is what the doctors say that we need to have in order to begin to reopen our society and economy as we tick closer to that April 26th goal. We asked the governor today if private labs are continuing to not report all of their negative results, because that would make the number of tests seem smaller than it really is.
We're not confident we have 100% of those negative results reported to the state by every lab. Many of the major labs are reporting them. So the number of negative tests is close, but is not fully reflective of every negative test in the state.
He was there at the convention center where they're doing some construction and setup. He's not just like in a different outfit every day. So remember what we told you on the tests. Colorado has the tests themselves. It's the swabs to take the samples and the lab agents to process the tests that we're lacking. As for those tests, more than 32,000 Coloradans have received them so far. 250 of the 6,500 people who have tested positive have not survived COVID-19. More than 1,300 Coloradans have been hospitalized since this all started, and we still do not have state numbers on how many have recovered. Getting those testing materials and the PPE into Colorado has become a team effort. So the governor set up this public-private partnership, the Innovation Response Team, gave them 3 key areas to work on, and today our Marshall Zellinger got a status report.
We're going to innovate our way to a sustainable, longer-term response.
That was Governor Jared Polis on March 22nd, introducing the Innovation Response Team. On the COVID-19 response organizational chart, they're right here. The governor gave the IRT 3 objectives. The first, develop a statewide system for mass testing and rapid results. But where are we on this goal? I asked the chief of staff of the Innovation Response Team.
We've had dramatic improvements in our lab capabilities throughout the state. That's partially because our state lab has massively scaled their ability to run tests.
Based on the state's update today, more than 32,000 people have been tested, yet not everyone who feels ill can get the test.
And what we've been doing is staying in regular contact with the biotech companies that those labs work with and making sure that they know from the governor on down it is a priority for them to be filling Colorado's orders.
The IRT's second objective, develop technology to track the spread of the virus, which is being done through testing and tracked on the state's website, breaking it down by cases, age group, and even county. The third objective is to create services for citizens under isolation or quarantine. For people who must stay at home, the state has created a stay-at-home website with resources that keep getting new additions.
The most important gap that we're working on is making sure people know it's actually available to them.
So what about numbers? What are the metrics by this innovation response team that will know if they're succeeding and over what time? I'm told an update will be coming over the next few weeks. And Kyle, as anybody knows, that you see an organizational chart and one with as many webs as that one, the news is probably going to come from the top point, not necessarily somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I would say so. I hope everybody is playing along with the things that Marshall is hiding in the background of his live shots every night. If you still have yesterday's on tape, you'll notice yesterday's and today's both kosher in their own way. All right, thank you, Marshall. So Gunnison, Clear Creek, and Chaffee County are all closed to non-residents. But after we mentioned that last night, Chaffee County wanted to make very clear that they're doing this on the honor system. Folks in Chaffee County reached out to us and said that they wanted it stressed that they are not putting up roadblocks. So we are getting some feedback tonight about my commentary last night, Happy Gilmore inspired, asking people if they're too good for their homes and why they insist on going up to the high country. Bob wrote in demanding that I apologize, saying that my commentary left him horrified and afraid. Bob said that he should be allowed to go to his second home in Chaffee County, but it's the entitled people from large population areas that are the problem. Justin and I talked about this on Twitter. He said that he was going to go up turkey hunting where he grew up, and he was thinking to be safe, he'd stay and camp in the woods, and hadn't even thought about the idea of an accident sending him to the hospital until we discussed it here. And Mandy wrote in to say, quote, "Thank you for putting into words what we have felt in our guts about why not to go to our cabin near Allens Park." Today's next question comes from Dennis Buckless in Aurora, one of the hundreds of questions submitted for our town hall with the governor.
Do we have to be concerned about mosquitoes carrying the virus now that summer is approaching?
Dennis, that is a fair question, and Chuck and Marianne and Edward all asked the same thing. Simple answer is no. We'll have 9 Health expert Dr. Pyle Coley explain.
Now, the coronavirus is mainly transmitted through direct contact, respiratory droplets, or by touching contaminated surfaces. This is in contrast to viruses that are borne by mosquitoes, where the mosquito actually has viral particles in their gut that are transmitted through their salivary glands and then inoculated into the skin of the person that the mosquito bites.
Social distancing is near impossible in a jail or prison setting. That's one reason why we've been seeing a number of early releases, just to create some space in there. Tonight, our Nusha Roy looks at how folks in corrections are balancing public health and public safety.
In the beginning of March, on average, there are around 1,800 people behind bars in Denver. By Monday, that number dipped to around 1,100.
To protect those inmates as well as the sheriff's deputies.
On top of routine releases, some inmates are being let out early to help with social distancing.
How do you decide who is being released?
So actually the system has been working quite well.
Denver's district attorneys said they're looking at pregnant women, people with less than 45 days left on their sentence, inmates over 60, and inmates on work release. But domestic violence advocates are worried.
That again, advocates are ready to help people safety plan.
Almost all of the cases that involve a victim, we have not agreed to early release. And in those cases where we think the person could be released early, my deputies will contact the victim or my victim advocates.
Who is in the Denver jail is pretty specific.
Only house misdemeanors who have been sentenced or people waiting for trial.
As for felons, the Department of Corrections released 52 inmates over the last week. Hundreds more are under consideration, and they were already short on space.
Private prison in Cheyenne Mountain here in Colorado Springs closed.
The DOC is very clear. They're only looking at lower risk offenders that can include drug charges and property crimes.
Now we're looking at people who don't have any victims' rights notification requirements, people who do not have an actual victim. 2, there's no sex offenders that we're releasing under the current guidelines and current criteria. We're not releasing anybody who's homeless.
So anyone who is being released on parole right now, they're still checking in with their parole officers, just looking a little bit different. Sometimes they're video chatting with their parole officers. I do want to point out what's happening in Weld County, though, where the ACLU is actually suing the sheriff right now, saying that they're not doing enough to protect inmates there. And the sheriff said that he would have loved to talk to us about this, but can't, Kyle, because that lawsuit is still going on.
And I know in New York State they had inmates making masks and what in Jeffco they've also got kind of a little project going on.
Yeah, they definitely do. So currently they actually have 29 people who are in isolation, 9 of them symptomatic. They got a whole bunch of protocols in place, Kyle, but one of them is using old uniforms right now to sew themselves masks while they're incarcerated.
That's inmates making themselves masks to wear. So a lot of people are at home. All right, thank you, Nisha.
Quick, everyone learn from history so we're not doomed to repeat it. Because Colorado's been through a pandemic and tried to reopen too soon. It was a century ago. And the moment that knocked her off her feet. There is always good news, even in the worst of times. And it's next.
Denver began shutting down businesses a century ago as influenza swept the world, and we began to realize that it was close contact that was helping to spread that virus. Historians will tell you that we made mistakes in 1919. Our Jeremy Hohola looks at whether we might learn from them.
When I look at faces in old black and white images, I wonder what those people would tell us. History sometimes screams at us from silent photos and archives as we make the same mistakes over and over again. Are we listening? Are we going back to that time and learning enough from history?
Well, we certainly should have learned from them to be prepared. They were scrambling to make masks at that time.
Dr. Stephen Leonard, a longtime history professor, and History Colorado historian Sam Bach spoke to me about the 1918 flu pandemic in our state.
They didn't know that outdoor gatherings were a problem, and so they didn't shut those down.
1,500 people died in Denver, about 8,000 across Colorado, millions of more souls around the world.
I can remember the day that my dad said he was going to call the doctor.
11 years ago on this station, we heard firsthand from Rose Worth, who was just a child in Colorado back then. She lost a baby sister and her parents.
And the minute he said she had the flu, I just knew I was going to lose her.
Back then, Leonard says initially elected officials dismissed the flu.
So we had a few weeks notice that it was on its way, or likely on its way. But what we did, at least initially, was pretty much head in the sand. We didn't want to admit that it was here.
Denver and Colorado began shutting down some businesses, but pressure to reopen grew.
I think the mistakes that public officials made really were in lifting gathering restrictions too early.
Theater owners who were financially hurting convinced public officials to let them reopen. Outdoor gatherings were allowed.
So in easing on restrictions, they really created a second bump, a second spike in cases of the flu that killed many more people.
What could we learn from that time period that we could apply to what we're experiencing today?
Well, social distancing is one thing that we certainly could learn if we haven't already.
As we've seen today, not everyone has taken social distancing seriously, with Denver even citing some businesses for refusing to shut down.
It's very similar. People were doing stupid things then, and people are doing stupid things now.
The old cliche, history repeats itself, exists for a reason. I hate to use it in this report, but it's true. We do have the power in the present to listen to the past.
So I think what's happening now is a test of our sense that we're all in this together.
There is no excuse for us. We've known a lot about the 1918 flu for a long time, but nobody mentions it. So we're the victims of our amnesia.
For Next, I'm Jeremy Hohola.
How about that line? There is no excuse for us. So we're going to have a little graduation celebration on Next. For all you high school seniors and college seniors who are either going to have graduation ceremonies canceled or postponed on you, we've decided to collect graduation messages via video. We're going to put something together, a little special celebration. So students, what would you like to say to the parents and the teachers who got you where you are today? Parents, what would you like to step out in front of Colorado and say about your student? And teachers and professors, what do you wish you could step on a stage and say to those graduating classes right now? Just take a video of you saying it and send it to us. Next@9news.com is the email, #HeyNext, and we're going to throw a party.
They never missed each other's big moments: childhood, school, relationships, births, and then a stupid pandemic messed everything up.
I love you. I missed you so much. I just want you to be here. and I can't wait. It's killing me that you won't see him at this size ever.
The good news is they'll see each other again. Next. Today is Friday. I understand keeping track of days is not always the easiest thing right now, but Fridays mean we carve out time for your good news. And tonight, two sisters, best friends. They have shared all of life's big moments up until the pandemic kept them apart.
Jess and I have been best friends since she was born.
Kelly and I have a very strong bond.
I remember sleeping outside her delivery room door, waiting for the news.
We were always there for each other. She was there for me, and I was there for her.
This time around, not even my daughter could come in to the hospital.
I'm an essential worker in the healthcare field, so I unfortunately don't get to see, my new nephew.
We couldn't have her meet the baby.
I don't want to risk anything, so we just FaceTime and everything, but it's not the same as holding a new baby.
I was sending her pictures of us making a cheesecake, and she said, "Oh, that looks so good. We want some." And I said, "Okay, it's yours."
I was like, "Yeah, I'll just come after work, and you leave it on your doorstep, and I can just pick it up."
I didn't really think about the camera recording her. I just wanted her to see the nephew real fast. And then she broke down and I was crying.
Seeing him so close, and then I can't hug him, and then I can't hug my sister. When I saw him, it took my breath away. He was just so beautiful. And then she was so beautiful too, and I just needed to take a moment.
I love you. I missed you so much. I just want you to be here.
I love you so much too. Can't wait to meet them.
These basements are dusty. You gotta clean these basements better. Man, every one of them dusty. So we're gonna look back on a lot of your photos and videos from this time, and you'll know just from looking, oh, yep, that was back during the Great Distancing. And some of these pictures are epic. Here's a great one. Len and Cindy met their new grandbaby this week. They stood out on the back porch while their daughter Sabrina and son-in-law Justin brought baby Gino to the door. And they will remember this moment. And if they remember this photo, it's probably because of the dog Bishi in the background lifting its leg right on cue. It's a sign, and it's called It's a Sign. Perhaps it's a sign that I've been in the dusty basement too long. That and your feedback next. It's a sign that collaboration remains even when the festival celebrating collaboration had to be canceled. So one of Denver's most popular beer festivals is Collab Fest, where normally competing brewers work together to make a special beer, and it got canceled when Most of Life got canceled. Peakview Brewing and Coal Mine Avenue Brewing already had their collaboration in the works. It's called It's a Sign, because Coal Mine and Peakview intersect behind Coal Mine Ave Brewing in Littleton. They made an imperial stout with grapes, raspberry, and cocoa. It is a beer-wine hybrid. Couldn't get it to Collab Fest, so they're going to sell it out of their tap rooms to go. And I say cheers to that. Kathy emails in with a very good question tonight. I want to read her email carefully. She says, with the workers at the JBS meat packaging plant testing positive for COVID-19, are there any concerns that the meat can get contaminated with the virus? Provided that you're not eating it raw, no, you're going to be completely fine. So again, this is just your reminder that if you have any concern about food coming into your house, if it's something that you're able to cook, the CDC guideline on reheating food was 150 degrees for 3 minutes, or you can microwave something and heat it back up. It's going to be fine. So Kathy, unless you're eating your meat like a cave woman, you'll be completely fine. Don't worry about that. And finally, a note tonight regarding the wood pile behind me. Please, Rod says, for the love of God, have Kyle rearrange the wood. We know it's a gas fireplace. Just move one piece per show. I'm not moving the wood, Rod. It's not what I'm going to do. I will see you next time.